2 o'clock in the afternoon on a sunny Tuesday in Beverly Hills. Sonya Curry parked her modest Honda Accord in front of the Rolex boutique on Rodeo Drive, took a deep breath, and checked her wallet again. She had been saving for months for this special moment, buying an anniversary gift that Del Curry would never buy for himself. She didn't know that in 40 minutes she would be escorted out of the store by security guards, while other customers filmed with cell phones what would become one of the most viral and transformative videos in social media history. To understand how a moment of humiliation transformed into the most powerful lesson about dignity and justice, we need to go back to the day when prejudice met the wrong family and paid the highest price imaginable. Sonya Curry, at 57 years old, wasn't just Steph Curry's mother. She was a respected educator, dedicated philanthropist, and a woman who had spent her life teaching about human dignity. But that afternoon, wearing simple jeans and a casual blouse, she was just another black woman entering a luxury store. And for some employees, that was enough for devastating judgments. Have you ever entered a place where you immediately felt unwelcome? Sonya was about to live that experience more intensely and publicly than she had ever imagined. The glass door of the Rolex opened with a soft chime of golden bells. The interior of the store was a temple of luxury. Marble walls, display cases, illuminated like altars, and watches that cost more than cars. Sonya smiled discreetly, imagining Del's expression when he saw the gift. Dignity cannot be bought, but it can be earned, she murmured to herself, repeating a phrase she had taught Steph and Seth throughout their childhood. It was her personal mantra, inherited from her own mother, and it always guided her in moments of nervousness. Kenneth Jones, store manager for 8 years, looked at Sonya from head to toe with that look she knew all too well. It was the look that said, "This person doesn't belong here." But Sonya had learned to ignore looks like that. She had bigger goals. "Good afternoon," she said, with the same natural elegance she had passed on to her children. "I would like to see some men's watches. It's for a special gift." Kenneth exchanged a look with Amanda Foster, one of the salespeople, before responding with a forced smile. "Of course. Do you have a price range in mind? We have some more accessible options." It was impossible not to notice the condescending tone. Sonya felt something contract in her chest, but maintained her composure. "Actually, I'm interested in the Daytona models. I heard they're the best." Kenneth's smile became even more forced. "The Daytonas cost between $50,000 and $100,000. He clearly didn't believe Sonya could afford one. How is it possible for someone to judge a person's financial capacity based solely on appearance? Sonya was about to discover how far that prejudice could go. "The Daytonas are quite expensive," Kenneth said slowly, as if he were explaining mathematics to a child. "Maybe you'd like to see some Tissot or Seiko first. We have a very nice selection of more practical watches." Sonya took a deep breath, calling upon all her experience as an educator to maintain patience. "Sir, I know exactly what I want, and I can pay for it. May I see the Daytonas, please?" The atmosphere in the store changed subtly. Other customers, all white, all wearing visibly expensive clothes, began to look in their direction. Sonya could feel the whispers, the silent judgments. Kenneth reluctantly guided Sonya to the Daytona display case, but his body language screamed discomfort. He kept his distance, as if she might contaminate the watches just by looking. "This one here is the classic model," he said, without enthusiasm, pointing to a golden Daytona. $75,000. It's beautiful, Sonya smiled genuinely. My husband will love it. May I hold it? Kenneth hesitated visibly. Well, it's a very expensive piece. I need to see some forms of payment before— Excuse me? Sonya interrupted, her voice maintaining politeness but gaining firmness. Are you asking me about payment before I've even decided if I want to buy it? What's most impressive is how prejudice can make intelligent people act in completely irrational ways. Kenneth was about to lose a $75,000 sale because of his own prejudices. It's store protocol, ma'am, Kenneth lied shamelessly. Sonya had observed other customers handling watches freely, without any questions about payment. Amanda Foster, who had been watching the scene with growing discomfort, approached. Kenneth, maybe we should— Amanda, can you check if we have any customers in the VIP room? Kenneth dismissed her quickly. He didn't want witnesses for what he was about to do. Sonya realized she was being isolated. The situation was escalating in a way she had never imagined. She was a respected woman, mother of famous athletes, educator with a master's degree, recognized philanthropist. But in that moment, none of that mattered. She was just a black woman in a luxury store, and that was enough to be treated as suspect. Look here, Kenneth leaned closer, lowering his voice. I think you don't really understand how things work here. This isn't a store for people like you. Maybe you should look for something more suited to your level somewhere else. The words hit Sonya like physical slaps. It wasn't just about money. It was about people like you. It was about her place in society. It was about everything she had fought against her entire life. Naturally, this leads us to the moment when Sonya Curry had to make a decision that would change not only her mourning, but potentially the lives of millions of people who suffer prejudice silently every day. I would like to speak with your manager, Sonya said, her voice trembling slightly, but not from fear, from contained indignation. I am the manager, Kenneth smiled with superiority, and I'm politely asking you to look for a store more appropriate for your budget. Other customers now completely stopped pretending they weren't paying attention. Some discreetly took out cell phones. An embarrassing situation was becoming a public spectacle. Dignity cannot be bought, but it can be earned, Sonya repeated to herself. But this time the words sounded like a desperate prayer for strength. Ma'am, Kenneth continued, his voice gaining authority, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disturbing other customers. I haven't done anything except try to buy a watch, Sonya responded, her dignity unshakable despite the humiliating situation. Security, Kenneth called. How many times do we witness moments where someone's dignity is publicly attacked, and we wonder if we would have the courage to intervene? The other customers in the store were living exactly that moment, and most chose complicit silence. Two security guards appeared quickly. They were big men, uniformed, trained to handle situations. Sonya, a 57-year-old educator trying to buy a gift for her husband, had become a situation. Ma'am, you need to come with us, one of the security guards said, not with cruelty, but with the firmness of someone following orders. Sonya looked around the store one last time. She saw curious faces, cell phones recording, whispers of approval from some customers who clearly agreed with the expulsion. She saw Amanda Foster in the corner, visibly uncomfortable but without the courage to intervene. I did nothing wrong, Sonya said, not to the security guards, but to everyone in the store. All I wanted was to buy a gift for my husband. Let's go, ma'am, the security guard insisted, placing his hand lightly on her arm. Sonya walked toward the door with the same dignity with which she had entered. But inside, something had broken. Not her pride, that remained intact, but her faith in the idea that the world had changed, that her children would grow up in a better society, that education and success could protect her from prejudice. On the sunny sidewalk of Beverly Hills, surrounded by luxury cars and well-dressed people, Sonya Curry felt lonelier than she had ever felt in her life. She didn't know that Amanda Foster had recorded part of the interaction. She didn't know that the video was already being sent to WhatsApp groups and social media. And she definitely didn't know that her son Steph would discover everything in a matter of hours. What Steph Curry would do when he discovered that his mother had been publicly humiliated would shock not only Beverly Hills, but the entire world. But what happened when Steph found out would change everything forever. 4 hours and 17 minutes. That was exactly how long it took for the video of Sonya Curry's humiliation to spread from local social media to Steph Curry's phone, who was in Oakland finishing a practice with the Golden State Warriors. "Steph, you need to see this," Draymond Green approached with his phone in hand, somber expression. "It's about your mom." Steph took the phone, and what he saw made his world stop completely. There was Sonya, his mother, his greatest inspiration, the woman who had raised him with unconditional love, being escorted out of a store as if she were a criminal. Have you ever felt that rage that burns inside and makes you question everything you believe about justice in the world? Steph Curry was about to experience that fury at levels he didn't know existed. The video was only 2 minutes long, but it showed enough. Sonya trying to maintain dignity while security guards guided her out, other customers filming as if it were entertainment, and Kenneth Jones watching from the door with a smile of satisfaction that made Steph's blood boil. "My God," Steph whispered, watching the video for the third time. Every second was a stab. "They treated my mother like trash," Draymond completed, his own indignation evident. "Steph, this already has 2 million views. Everyone's talking about it." It was impossible not to feel that the world had divided into two types of people: those who were outraged by the treatment given to Sonya, and those who secretly agreed with the store's attitude. The comments on social media revealed a society still deeply divided on racial issues. Steph immediately called Sonya. The phone rang several times before she answered, and when she did, her voice sounded tired in a way he had never heard. "Hi, son." "Mom, I saw the video. I'm coming home now." "Steph, no. It's not worth it. These things happen." Sonya's words hit Steph like lightning. These things happen? His mother, one of the strongest women he knew, was minimizing her own humiliation to protect him from pain. How is it possible that a mother suffers injustice and still tries to protect her son from her own indignation? Steph was seeing exactly that maternal love manifest, and it made him even more determined to act. "Mom, this shouldn't happen to anyone, much less to you." "Steph, dear, I learned long ago that not all battles are worth fighting. Some places simply don't want us, and that's okay." "No, Mom, it's not okay." Steph hung up the phone with a resolution growing in his chest. For the first time in his life, he felt that his fame, his influence, his money, all of it had a purpose greater than basketball. It had the purpose of protecting people like his mother. Naturally, this leads us to the moment when Steph Curry realized he wasn't just fighting for his mother's dignity, but for the dignity of millions of people who suffer the same prejudice daily. In the following hours, Steph's phone didn't stop ringing. Journalists, friends, other athletes, all wanting to know what his reaction would be. Some suggested boycotts. Others talked about lawsuits. Many wanted inflammatory statements that would generate more views. But Steph had something different in mind, something no one would expect. Rachel Kim, ESPN journalist who had covered Steph for years, got an exclusive interview. She expected to find an angry man, ready to declare war against Rolex. Instead, she found someone calculatedly calm. Steph, how do you feel about what happened to your mother? Rachel, first I want to make it clear that my mother is one of the most dignified women I know. She's an educator, philanthropist, raised 2 children who became professional athletes. But more important than all that, she's a human being who deserves basic respect. And what will be your response to this situation? Steph paused, choosing his words carefully. Dignity cannot be bought, but it can be earned. And sometimes, earning dignity means showing the world that certain attitudes have consequences. What's most impressive is how someone can transform personal pain into strategic determination. Steph wasn't just angry. He was calculating how to use his rage to create real change. Meanwhile, the Beverly Hills Rolex store was facing its own storm. Protests formed outside. Customers canceled purchases. The brand's social media was flooded with negative comments. Kenneth Jones, the manager who had humiliated Sonya, was called to an emergency meeting with company executives. "Kenneth, do you have any idea of the damage you've caused?" asked the regional director. "Our sales dropped 30% just today." "I was following protocol," Kenneth defended himself. "That woman was clearly out of place." "Protocol? What protocol says to expel customers based on appearance?" "Well, it's common sense. People like her don't buy $70,000 watches." Kenneth's ignorance was so deep that he didn't even realize how harmful his words were. People like her had become his professional death sentence. Amanda Foster, the saleswoman who had recorded the incident, was called to testify about what happened. She was in a delicate position. She had witnessed an injustice, but also needed to keep her job. "Amanda, tell us exactly what happened," asked the Human Resources Director. Mrs. Curry came in, was polite, knew exactly what she wanted. Kenneth treated her inappropriately from the first moment. Inappropriately how? He judged her based on appearance, assumed she didn't have money, suggested cheaper watches, and when she insisted on seeing the Daytonas, he said the store wasn't for people like her. How many times do witnesses of injustice remain silent for fear of personal consequences? Amanda was facing exactly that dilemma, but this time chose truth. Amanda's testimony sealed Kenneth's fate. But that was just the beginning of the transformation that was to come. While Rolex struggled with damage control, Steph was in meetings that no one knew were happening. Meetings with lawyers, financial consultants, corporate acquisition specialists. "Steph, are you sure about this?" asked his agent. "It's a huge investment for a symbolic gesture." "It's not a symbolic gesture," Steph responded with a calm that impressed everyone in the room. "It's an investment in the kind of world I want to leave for my children." Sonya, at home, watched the news about the case spreading nationally. Part of her felt pride for the support she was receiving. Another part worried about the exposure and controversy. Del Curry sat next to his wife. "Sonya, you know Steph isn't going to let this pass, right?" "I know. I just hope he doesn't do something that could hurt his career." "Honey, you raised a man of principles. Trust him." "Dignity cannot be bought, but it can be earned," Sonya murmured, repeating the words she had taught her children. "I just hope Steph understands that sometimes the best conquest is knowing when to stop fighting." She was wrong. Steph wasn't planning to stop fighting. He was planning to fight in a way no one had ever seen. On social media, the Dignity for All movement was gaining momentum. People from all over the country shared their own stories of prejudice in luxury retail. Sonya's case had become a symbol of something much larger, but no one, not Sonya, not the media, not Rolex executives, was prepared for what Steph Curry was about to do. The next morning, Steph made a call that would change everything. "Hello, I would like to speak with the owner of the Beverly Hills Rolex boutique. I have a business proposal he can't refuse." No one could imagine that moment would be the turning point. 3 days after his mother's humiliation, Steph Curry walked through the same door of the Rolex boutique, where Sonya had been expelled. But this time, he wasn't there as a customer. He was there as the new owner of the store. The negotiation had been concluded in record time. $22 million, paid in full, to acquire not only that store, but the entire West Coast Rolex franchise network. What no one expected was what Steph would do after the purchase. "Ladies and gentlemen," Steph said to the employees gathered in the empty store, his voice echoing through the space that 3 days before had witnessed his mother's humiliation. "We're going to have a conversation about dignity, respect, and what it really means to serve people. Have you ever witnessed the exact moment when power changes hands and justice finally finds its way?" Kenneth Jones, the manager who had expelled Sonya, was about to live that experience unforgettably. Kenneth was visibly nervous, sweating despite the store's perfect air conditioning. He knew his career was hanging by a thread, but still didn't fully comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. "Mr. Curry," Kenneth tried a forced smile, "I want to apologize for the misunderstanding with your mother. It was a communication error." Steph looked at him with a calm that was more intimidating than any scream. "Kenneth, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was pure and simple prejudice, and prejudice has consequences." It was impossible not to feel the tension in the air as Steph walked through the store, touching the display cases his mother had been prevented from seeing, stopping exactly at the spot where she had been humiliated. "Amanda Foster," Steph called the saleswoman who had recorded the incident. "You did the right thing by documenting what happened. That helped expose an injustice." Amanda breathed with relief. "Thank you, Mr. Curry. I felt very bad for not intervening at the moment." "Sometimes, documenting the truth is the most courageous way to intervene," Steph responded. "And now, you're going to help me implement changes that ensure this never happens again. How is it possible for someone to transform a moment of pain into an opportunity for education and transformation?" Steph was demonstrating exactly how to do that. Steph turned to Kenneth, who was getting paler by the second. "Kenneth, you told my mother that this store wasn't for people like her. I'd like you to explain what you meant by that." I didn't. It was misinterpreted." "It wasn't misinterpreted. It was recorded. So I'll ask again, what did you mean by people like her?" The silence that followed was deafening. Kenneth knew that any answer would be his public confession of prejudice. Naturally, this leads us to the most impactful moment of the transformation, when Steph decided to demonstrate what it really means to treat all people with dignity. "Kenneth, you're fired. Not for revenge, but because someone who can't see dignity in all customers shouldn't work in customer service." Kenneth tried to argue. "Mr. Curry, I have a family, bills to pay." "My mother also has a family," Steph interrupted. "And even so, you treated her as if she weren't worthy of basic respect." The consequences of our choices sometimes come when we least expect them. Steph then did something no one expected. But I'm going to give you something you didn't give my mother. A second chance. I'll pay for a cultural sensitivity and diversity course. When you complete the course and demonstrate that you've really changed, you can come back to work, not as a manager, but as a salesperson, learning humility from the beginning. What's most impressive is how true leadership isn't just about punishing mistakes, but about creating opportunities for growth and redemption. Steph was showing a form of justice that few can practice. Amanda Foster was promoted to general manager. Marcus Williams, a young African-American with an MBA in administration, was hired as regional director. The team was completely renewed, but with a focus on diversity, not just racial, but of experiences, social origins, and perspectives. From today, Steph announced to the new team, this store operates under a new principle. Dignity cannot be bought, but it can be earned. And we're going to earn the dignity of every customer who enters here, treating each person as if they were our own family. 1 week later, Steph did something that surprised even his own mother. He called Sonya and asked her to return to the store. "Son, I don't know if I'm ready for that," Sonya admitted. "Mom, I understand. But I want to show you something. I want to show you how this store should have received you from day one." Sonya arrived at the Rolex boutique accompanied by Steph, but didn't know the surprise was just beginning. The store had been completely redesigned. Where before there had been intimidating display cases, now there were welcoming spaces. The new team had been trained not only about products, but about genuine hospitality. "Welcome, Mrs. Curry," Amanda Foster said with a genuine smile. "It's an honor to receive you today." Sonya looked around, recognizing the space where she had been humiliated, but seeing it completely transformed. It's different. It's as it should have been from the beginning," Steph responded. Marcus Williams approached, carrying a tray with the golden Rolex Daytona that Sonya had tried to buy the week before, the same watch for which she had been ridiculed. "Mrs. Curry," Marcus said respectfully, "would you like to try this watch? It's exactly the model you were interested in." Tears began to form in Sonya's eyes, not from sadness, but from a complex emotion that mixed pride for her son, relief for justice, and renewed hope in humanity. "Steph," she whispered, "this is beautiful, but you didn't need to." "Mom, I needed to. Not for the watch. For the principle. How many times do we witness a circle of injustice close in such a poetic and transformative way?" Sonya was living exactly that, returning to the place of her humiliation as the queen she should always have been treated as. Sonya put the watch on her wrist. It was perfect, not just the weight of the gold and Swiss precision, but the symbolic weight of restored dignity. "How much does it cost?" she asked, even knowing Steph would obviously pay. "For you? It's priceless," Marcus responded. "It's a gift from the new management, with apologies for the previous experience. Dignity cannot be bought, but it can be earned," Sonya murmured, looking at the watch's reflection in the display case. "And today, Mom, your dignity was earned definitively," Steph smiled. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Steph had discreetly invited the media to document the transformation, not to promote himself, but to show the world that real change is possible when people with power decide to use it for good. Rachel Kim from ESPN was there to capture the historic moment. "Steph, what do you hope people learn from this?" "That consequences can be transformative, not just punitive," Steph responded. "That when we have power, whether financial, social, or any type, we have responsibility to use it to create the world we want to. See? And do you believe this will create lasting change? Steph looked at his mother, trying on watches with the respect and dignity she had always deserved. Rachel, lasting change begins with one act at a time. Today, my mother was treated with the dignity she deserves. Tomorrow, it will be someone else's mother. And so on. Sonya approached the cameras, holding her son's hand. I want all people who suffer prejudice to know. You have dignity. You deserve respect. And there are people willing to fight for it. It was possible to perceive that that moment transcended a personal story. It had become a symbol of how to use privilege to protect the vulnerable, how to transform pain into purpose, how to create justice without seeking revenge. When they left the store, Sonya was wearing the Rolex Daytona that had been denied to her 1 week before. But more important than the watch was what it represented. Tangible proof that dignity always finds its way, even when that path passes through temporary humiliation. Son, Sonya said in the car, you transformed the worst day of my life into one of the best. No, Mom, you transformed it. Your dignity in the face of humiliation taught me how to react. I just followed your example. And it was then that the truth finally came to light. 1 year after the Rolex boutique transformation, Sonya Curry was again in Beverly Hills. But this time, she wasn't there to buy a watch. She was inaugurating the Sonya Curry Center of Excellence in Service, a training institute that Steph had created to educate luxury retail employees about dignity, respect, and inclusion. Dignity cannot be bought, but it can be earned, Sonya said into the microphone before an audience of 300 store owners, managers, and salespeople from across the country. And today, we're going to learn together how to earn dignity for every person who enters our establishments. What had begun as an act of personal justice had transformed into the largest diversity and inclusion training program in American luxury retail. To understand how we arrived at this revolutionary moment, we need to see how a humiliation transformed into the seed of the deepest change the retail industry had ever witnessed. Have you ever seen how a single courageous action can create waves that spread far beyond what anyone could imagine? Steph Curry had discovered that when you use your power to do right, the universe conspires to amplify your impact. So in the 12 months that followed the Rolex store purchase, Steph didn't stop at transforming a single boutique. He had acquired 27 luxury stores along the West Coast, jewelry stores, watch stores, designer clothing stores, all implementing the same service standard based on universal dignity. Marcus Williams, who had been promoted from salesperson to regional director after the Rolex renovation, was now supervising the entire Curry Luxury Group store network. Mr. Curry, Marcus Seats, reported in his monthly presentation, our sales increased 340% last year. But more importantly, our customer satisfaction rate is 98%, the highest in the industry. It was impossible not to notice that treating people with dignity wasn't just morally correct. It was also extremely profitable. Steph smiled, looking at the numbers. Marcus, this proves something my mother always knew. When you treat people well, they return that treatment in ways you can't even imagine. Amanda Foster, now training director of the program, had developed a revolutionary curriculum that was being adopted by luxury chains across the country. The program included not only sales techniques, but workshops on empathy, cultural history, and psychology of unconscious bias. How is it possible that a woman who witnessed injustice becomes the leader in teaching how to prevent that injustice? Amanda was proving that witnesses can become agents of change when they find opportunity and support. The impact went beyond sales. Kenneth Jones, the former manager who had humiliated Sonya, completed his cultural sensitivity course and was working as a junior salesperson in the original store. But something fundamental had changed in him. "Mrs. Foster," Kenneth approached Amanda after a particularly busy shift, "can I ask a question?" "Of course, Kenneth." "How did you manage to give me a second chance when I did something so terrible?" Amanda smiled with the wisdom of someone who had witnessed real transformation. "Kenneth, Steph Curry taught us that true justice isn't about punishment. It's about education and growth. You were acting out of ignorance, not malice, and ignorance can be cured with knowledge." Naturally, this leads us to the moment when the world realized that Steph's transformation had inspired a much larger national movement. The Breeden Dignity for All movement, which had begun as a response to Sonya's humiliation, now had more than 10 million followers. People from all over the country shared stories of prejudice suffered, but also stories of establishments that had changed their practices after seeing Steph's store example. Rachel Kim from ESPN was documenting the phenomenon for a 1-hour special. "Steph, when you bought that first store, did you imagine this would become a national movement?" "Rachel, honestly, I just wanted my mother to be treated with the dignity she always deserved. But I learned something important. When you act with integrity, other people are inspired to do the same." "And what has been the most significant impact for you personally?" Steph paused, considering the question. "Seeing my mother recover not only her dignity, but her faith in humanity. For a moment, that experience had hurt her deeply. Now, she uses that experience to teach others about overcoming and transformation. What's most impressive is how pain can transform into purpose when we find constructive ways to channel our indignation." Sonya had become one of the country's most requested speakers on diversity and inclusion. At the training center, Sonya was conducting a particularly intense session with store managers who had had problems similar to the original Rolex. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had lived both humiliation and redemption, "I want you to understand something fundamental. Every customer who enters your store is someone who deserves the same respect you would give to your own mothers." A manager raised his hand. "Mrs. Curry, how can we overcome our unconscious biases?" "First rule, recognize that we all have biases. I do too. The difference lies in consciously choosing not to act based on them. When you see someone enter the store and feel an automatic judgment, stop and ask yourselves, am I seeing this person, or am I seeing my own fears and limitations?" 6 months after the training center's inauguration, something extraordinary happened. The Federal Trade Commission recognized the Curry program as a national model for inclusive retail practices, recommending its adoption by establishments across the country. Sonya received the official notification during a training session. When she read the announcement to the participants, there was an explosion of applause that lasted 5 minutes. "Dignity cannot be bought, but it can be earned," she said, tears of pride streaming down her face. And today, our conquest became an example for the entire nation. How many times do we witness someone completely transform a traumatic experience into a driving force for positive social change? Sonya had proved that this was possible on a scale that surprised even herself. Steph, who was in the audience that day, approached his mother after the presentation. "Mom, you know you've changed the lives of thousands of people?" Son, we changed them. You with your courage to act, me with my willingness to transform pain into teaching. And what did we learn from all this? Sonya looked around the training center, seeing people from all backgrounds learning about mutual respect, and smiled. We learned that dignity is contagious. When you treat one person with dignity, they pass it forward. And thus, one action at a time, we change the world. 2 years after the original humiliation, Sonya was again at the Beverly Hills Rolex boutique. But this time, she was there with an international delegation of retail executives who had come to study the Curry model of inclusive service. Kenneth Jones, now customer service supervisor, received her at the door. "Mrs. Curry," he said, with a genuine humility that contrasted completely with the arrogance of 2 years before. "It's an honor to receive you again. I hope you can see how this store has transformed." "Kenneth," Sonya smiled, "what impresses me most isn't how the store changed. It's how you changed. And that gives me hope that any person can choose to grow." The international delegation was impressed not only with the sales numbers, but with the store's atmosphere. There was a different energy, warm, welcoming, genuinely respectful. "Mrs. Curry," asked a French executive, "what's the secret to this model's success?" "It's not a secret," Sonya responded. "It's simply remembering that every person who enters here is someone important to someone. They're a mother, a son, a daughter, a father. And everyone deserves to be treated as you would want your own family to be treated." It was possible to perceive that the philosophy had become much more than a sales technique. It had become a way of seeing shared humanity in every interaction. At the end of the visit, Sonya did something that perfectly symbolized the complete journey. She bought another Rolex, not because she needed it, but to demonstrate how the same transaction that had been denied with humiliation was now celebrated with dignity. "For my grandson," she explained to Kenneth as he carefully wrapped the watch. "I want him to know that dignity isn't about what you wear or possess. It's about how you treat other human beings." Steph, observing everything from a distance, felt a deep satisfaction that no basketball victory had ever provided. He had used his privilege not for himself, but to create a better world for his mother and for millions of people like her. "Dignity cannot be bought, but it can be earned," he murmured, watching Sonya be treated like the queen she should always have been. Steph Curry's mother had been expelled from a Rolex store. What he did in return didn't just shock the entire world, it transformed it, one dignified interaction at a time. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's the true definition of using power for good. Not just correcting an injustice, but creating a system where that injustice becomes impossible to repeat.